Hey, Dylan.
Hey, Mike.
Dylan, you know what's great about diving in to something you don't know anything about?
What's great?
It's great when you have a support network,
Yes, it is.
when you can ask somebody for help, when you can post on a forum and say, I'm a frickin' idiot.
And they
What
won't
should I
flame
do?
you for that.
And there's no Jim Perry in those forums.
Thread locked.
Uh, actually, I don't know that that's the case.
Advertisement locked.
I cannot verify that there are not Jim Perry posts in the Sunburn forums.
But he's not a moderator.
But he's not a moderator.
Wow, this
He can just
this ad
petition.
got deeply personal.
This went off into a weird place that I did not plan for
Deeply
very
personal.
quickly. But no. What I want to point out is that the Sunburn framework and the guys at Synapse Gaming run a very active and are very involved in their own forums on their site. And when I started using the Sunburn framework, I was trying to use the Sunburn framework for 2D games.
Right.
Which is their latest endeavor in the framework. So it's very new. I'm using what they call the early adopter program. So essentially, you can run the stable build of the Sunburn game framework, or you can run the early release and basically, like, hey, I'm okay with, some issues that might come up. I want to be on the cutting edge, or basically choose when you want to, like, handle the stable and what features you want to jump in based on where you're at in your game development. So if you're just starting, you might as well jump in on the early access because they do update fairly often with new releases and improve performance and add new features. So jumping in on that early features, early stuff like that. These guys helped me a ton on what was really just basic math.
Stuff that wasn't necessarily even related to.
It was on a tangent related because I was just trying to figure out how they set up their 2D projection in a 3D space, and for me trying to map it so that it mapped in the way that I wanted my level editor to work with the Sunburn engine to map, and went back and forth and posted codes, and those guys came back and they helped me out get the formula that I needed to get all that on screen. So. If you do check into the Sunburn gaming engine, they have a great forum just dedicated to pre-sales questions. So if you're, can it do this? Can it do this for me? What's it like doing this? If I have this type of model or this type of object, can it do it? And not only from other community members, but the guys at Synapse Gaming will get in there and answer those questions as well. So if you're interested in more on this and checking out these forums, they are at synapsegaming.com. All right, welcome everyone to the show. Tonight I am with Dylan.
Hi.
Cicely.
Hola.
Who forgot your iPad? No, there it is. Okay. I'll make sure you didn't have to run up and get it later. And we're also being joined by Stephen Hurdle of Writings of Mass Deduction. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Hey, great to be here.
You're celebrating a milestone of sorts, an anniversary. Not only has the site been up for a year, but you've hit a game review for every day for a year.
Yeah, I had no specific consecutive daily reviews target when I started. I just kind of sleptwalked into it day after day.
Now, the point of Writings of Mass Deduction is a little different than your average review site.
Yeah, absolutely. My goal from the beginning was to not do the hot new releases. I was looking at the Indie Games channel and seeing, at the time, I think it was around 1,200 games, certainly more than that now. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to find the hidden gems because I couldn't believe that there weren't piles and piles of fantastic games that were released on the wrong week or for whatever reason didn't find their audience. And at the time, if you went to some of the forums and read some of the comments on some of the websites, there was a perception out there that it was all zombie massage simulators and that kind of thing, and I didn't believe that was true. And I thought by doing a review every day, I would just start until I ran out of good games, and then I'd be able to point to people in forum discussions saying, hey, look, here are X number of games that are really good games, none of them are zombie massage simulators. I never quite expected it would go this far.
So, now you said in your post you don't think there's another 365 games. But what's your review queue look like right now? Or do you even have a review queue and it's more of just kind of going down a list of all of them?
Well, I have a bit of a queue. I suspect that the consecutive reviews are going to stop around 400, at which point I'll start doing a couple a week, because I don't want to review find every hidden gem, review every game that I'm interested in that others might be interested in, and then have nothing other than hot new releases to look at and just be yet another hot new release site. I want to be able to keep the focus on the hidden gems, and to do that I have to stop with a bit of a backlog still.
Okay. Now, some may question, why set up the indie review site? Is it just that, you wanted to get out there and say, hey, there are these indie games? Are you looking like, hey, I want to find my way into being a review writer on another site, and I'm kind of setting this up as a body of work, or?
No, I've got a day job working in the bicycle industry that I really love, and I have no aspirations in the gaming industry, not as a developer, not as a journalist. I set it up because I'm a frequent reader and comment contributor on Kotaku, and I was frankly just getting frustrated at the attitude of some of the other commenters there, and I wanted to prove them wrong.
All right. So in these, you've done like 365 now. You got a couple in the queue incoming. But your one of your rules is that they're not on the top 50 list. So you're looking for ones that have fallen off the list, and either they get bumped back on, later. But most of them, because of the way the list works, that's really hard to do. So these are really overlooked games. It does not actually surprise me that there are 365 good games worth looking at on the service, because I know as many as we've played, and we haven't. When we started GameMarx, we did jump all around, and then we made a decision coming into this year of all right, let's always stay on the new releases.
New, all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go all new all the time for a while. So we made that. But I know when we were jumping around, there was a lot of games we were digging up that I just couldn't believe weren't talked about or nobody did. I know you covered Along Came a Spider.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is such a awesome little beautiful game. Like everything's right about that game. It's not too long. It's got a funky style to it. The graphics and the gameplay work well with the music, and
it's not too hard. It's not stupid easy. Yeah.
And it's a great ideal indie game. It's a great. I'm gonna sit down for $1. Play this for a couple hours. That was pretty cool. Good use. It was a good $1. That was pretty cool, and enjoyed it. So what are some of your favorites that you've gone through that stick out after 365 games? Which ones stick out?
Yeah, it's a bit like choosing your favorite child or something. It's that you're gonna regret it afterwards. But Battle Beat is a game I reviewed somewhere in the 30s, and this is a game that I can't believe that no one talks about. Battle Beat is a rhythm shooter, and
this is the ships, right?
No, it's infantry actually. So it's a bit like tower defense meets third-person shooter meets rhythm dance game, and there's a strategy. It meets a strategy game. You have a strategy element to it, in that you have to decide where you put your troops in your formation and what troops you take into battle with you, and then you have to use either the gamepad or rhythm controller, like a guitar or a drum controller, to hit the buttons at the beat to make them fire. And meanwhile, you have waves of enemies trying to overrun your position. It's such a simple game, but it is just so engaging. Like, man, if you haven't reviewed it, I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I don't think I've played that one. I was pulling it up, and Stegs is in chat that this is one of his games, and Stegs is such a fan of the show, and we talk so much now. I guess I should feel slightly embarrassed that I've never checked out this game of his, but I don't. I feel no remorse here. I've
played a lot of games.
Is Battle Beats one word or two?
Two. Battle Space Beat.
Maybe if I pull up a screenshot, maybe I played it. But
no, because I remember we talked about Beat Hazard and we talked about a couple of other games like that, but I don't remember. That may have been, maybe that came out before we were doing new releases, and actually before we were doing reviews.
December 30th, 2009 is what the chat has for the release trailer.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I think that's
We've
before.
never played this.
No, I don't think we ever.
That would have been before we.
I do recognize it one of the screenshots now, but it's not one that we played. You know where we may have discussed this is when we were trying to do the video, but I think we included This Is Hard. Remember when we did the video of top games, and then we said, well, if we do one by a developer, then we're not going to do a second game by the same developer if we put that in there.
I don't know. We did a dual stick shooter video, and we did a puzzle game video, I think.
No. I mean, when we did the video of the trailer of indie games,
okay, I see
and
what
we
you're
made like a list of the top 30 by ratings. But then we crossed off any developers that had multiple games in there to allow a more diverse set of developers in the list.
Right.
So we ended up picking, for Stegosaurus, we ended up picking up This Is Hard, which I actually loved. I think it was the last game he's put out that I've actually loved. I don't think since then. I think since then, every game he's put out, I've said, why can't he do This Is Hard too? I think I've said that.
What? I don't think you hated like Blow Me Up or some of the other.
Blow Me Up was cute. Two at Once was cute, but he's just wasting his time. He needs to follow up.
Do so much
which
better.
I think, which I think he's told me too. It's like not one of his best selling. But oh well, that's the price of being an artiste, right?
Another game that. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Another game that no one talks about, and I just can't understand it, is Rainbow Ball Into Adventure. This somehow released at the wrong time. I don't know what happened to it, but this is an amazing game that is very rarely discussed. And it was actually created by a family together. I think the father did most of the coding. It has hand-drawn art by his kids. But it's not that. It actually works surprisingly well together. The production values actually are quite decent. Sometimes with that hand-drawn, created by the committee element, it can have a cutesy feel, but not really come together. And that wasn't this. It's inspired by Katamari, but it's not a clone. It's got a few twists that are unique to it, and just an amazing audio style and art style, and definitely one that people should be checking out.
Yeah, I can tell you right now that I don't think if I was browsing, and unfortunately, so this one came out right before we covered every game. So this one came out in December 2010.
Yeah.
So we were getting all set to throw the switch. We're going to cover every game for 2011.
In 2010, we were also doing the reviews for the top however many.
Were we actually doing top fives in?
I think
No. But we went back and wrote reviews for like the top, the list of
to put a button on the Switch to say, okay, we're going to switch over and just cover new games. We had taken those top 30 lists and we decided to write a review. So that if you released in that December period for us, we missed it. I'm checking out the things here, and I'll make sure to get links to these games in our show notes as well for anybody who wants to check out these games, because I know definitely I'm going to go back and take a look at these. Yeah, I am seeing like in the screenshots the Katamari Even the little Katamari guys, although it looks like they're collecting the Katamari guys, not playing a Katamari guy.
This is one of those games where you can just tell by playing it that every single person loved every second that they put into it. And it comes through in the final product.
I'm going to admit, I like Katamari, so I'm not ashamed of that. I have rolled up the universe. I have done that.
I have tried, and I have gotten dizzy every single time. I don't know what it is. I don't get vertigo about many things, but apparently that game just makes me dizzy for hours later.
It was my...
I've never played it.
I need to get across 10,000 gamer points. So back when my score was like at 9,900 and something, I'm like, man, I just need something. What's under here? My girls had Katamari, and I'm like, I'm going to pop that in because I can get a couple hundred gamer points in it, and then I'll pop it out. And I ended up playing the whole thing. I ended up going through the whole thing.
That is a sign of a problem right there, though. Like, what can I, that's like looking in your couch cushions for spare change.
If I'm not asking for too much, Steven, do you have another one sticking out?
A personal favorite is, well, I'm a sucker for space opera. I grew up on Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica, and so StarCon, I've got to give a shout out to them, and the developer is quite active on Twitter and as well, and I love that game.
Which one?
StarCon.
StarCon. Oh.
Yeah, it's got certain elements of them. It's got certain elements that people who played the Star Control games might remember, but it's really, particularly with how you equip and upgrade your ship. But it's played out on a much bigger scale than the melee mode of the Star Control games.
Okay, yeah, I was getting, what was it, Aphelion? That's what I thought you were getting ready to...
I figured that was on the top 50 list somewhere. So
you reviewed that one, didn't you, Dylan?
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is that I've done so many games in such a short period of time that if you threatened my life or offered to give me $1 million, if I could name 20% of them, I probably couldn't.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there are a ton of games that were just amazing that I ought to be mentioning because no one's talking about them, and people should be, that I'm just not thinking of.
I know it's going to be interesting for us. We're going to try to do a wrap-up show, an award show for 2011, because we have, between the three of us, we have played every game released this year.
Wow.
We've stayed on top of it, and we're in the home stretch now.
Wow.
To be able to come back and do a true, like what do we think our game of the year is, deliberation, and just going back, like looking at games that we played in, I'm trying to think, the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
That we've completely forgotten about. Like, I was looking at some old video and just pulling up, and it's like, oh yeah, remember Mimi in the Ear? The dual stick shooter weird thing from Japan that came out? Like, I completely forgot about that.
Well, I think having them in front of us and being able to go back and look at screen or box art will do it for me, I think.
Oh yeah, Stegs, we'll definitely have Worst of the Year, and we'll probably have some special categories as well. I think
you can do that. I don't know that I feel comfortable doing Worst of the Year because...
Oh, I got my nominee right in my head.
One, it's harsh, and two, there are so many... Oh, no, I kid.
He was being nice, and then he dug in a knife.
Yeah.
And twisted.
But I think you will be better at Worst of the Year. You will probably have more to say about the Worst of the Year than about the Best of the Year.
App Hub is down?
Now, Steven, let me ask you, 'cause this is something that I've fallen into, and I think Dylan and Cicely as well. After having played so many games for review and playing such a high number of games, I found that I do have that reviewer's bias now of this game is showing me nothing new. I could put in another dual stick shooter and I can honestly tell you I'm not going to like it because it's going to be just another dual stick shooter. Sure, it has good graphics, they all have flamethrowers. It doesn't do anything new. This game is a pass. This game isn't worth your time.
For me, it's more Burnout, but it's also the fact that I can see the marks of a good or bad game a mile away. And it is, in some cases, prejudice, but, most of the time, it's fairly...
I seem to have mostly avoided that. I space them out, though. I don't review 5 dual-stick shooters in a week. I might do... I don't even know if I do 5 in a month. So, I make sure I space them out because, people keep buying the new Call of Duty every year and the new, sports game of the choice every year. So people seem to be able to look past that.
Yeah, because there's a concern that's like, if you're way out of touch with what people are buying, then you kind of are off on your own. That may be good or bad. I think it's just more important to be upfront with your biases.
Have you played Echoes Plus?
I'm sorry, I played what?
Echoes Plus?
Echoes Plus?
Yeah.
This isn't... I know there's...
Is this an indie game, or is this...
Yes, it is. It's an Xbox Live indie game.
Huh. Echoes...
I reviewed it.
I remember there was...
Half-Brick Echoes.
Half-Brick Echoes, yeah.
No, this is different. This is the dual-stick shooter for people who are burnt out in every other dual-stick shooter. I'd recommend you're putting your 80, reading my review and flunking 80 Microsoft points on it, or at least trying the trial. It's got some modes that are totally different than anything I've seen in any other dual-stick shooter.
I know the ones I liked the pretty much anything by Luke, any of the Radiant games.
Yep.
Like the way he did the polish and all those were excellent. I Made a Game of Zombies, and it of course has the humor. Yeah. I don't know that you'll ever get to review that one if you stick to your has to be off the top 50 list rule. But I mean, that just had a humor, and that just is a good chuckle and
it was one of the
interesting. One of the first ones that we played. Yes, that's true. But I also liked, and this one's been kind of buried, I think. What was the jazz one? Where your shots move to the music.
Oh,
yeah.
Groove. Yeah.
Yeah, I have reviewed Groove, yes.
Yeah, I think we reviewed that.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I kind of, that's when we were doing, like, the video segments. I don't know if we wrote up a review on it, but we did a video, that was in our first video. That was in our first video show.
I want to say because I want to say that was one of the top of, that we did at the end of 2010.
No. Groove?
Yeah.
We did Groove in our very first video.
Well,
I'm talking about the very first episode of the show.
I think we did it both places.
It's like August of 2009.
I remember playing Groove for a while, and I probably wouldn't have otherwise.
But now, so yeah, like what I'm saying is I see, like, just there was a couple this week. Maybe it's because we're also playing all the new releases, and that might be speeding it up again because there are a lot of good diamonds in the rough. The majority are not that. The majority are not worth playing.
I'd argue that's true of the retail release too. If you go down to your local game store, what percentage of those games would you ever enjoy playing?
Yeah, I agree with you
5%,
there as well.
3%?
I don't think indies are doing any worse or better than your retail, and probably better than what's released on the Wii.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, even if you went out and played, Modern Warfare 3 and Battlefield 3 and, every first-person shooter there was back-to-back, it would be different than diving into one particular one for, a span of months. So,
yeah,
that's kind of what we get.
What the average person will do. I guess many might get Battlefield and Modern Warfare, but I think the majority might end up on one or the other.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's hard for me to play. I'm not a first person.
I thought that was
shooter,
a good example, just because there are so many first person shooters.
I guess the real answer to your question then is that if I've recently reviewed a dual stick shooter and I see one that looks promising, I'll throw it in the queue and wait until I feel like playing a dual stick shooter again. Which
is a good advantage of the way that you're doing the reviews, in that you're not trying to cover them as they come out, so we're kind of bound to cover them. Although we stopped writing reviews several months ago.
Yeah, I don't even remember when that was.
I'm
not sure what we're gonna do with all those review tokens we're talking about. Like,
we have to come up with something. We got a ton of review tokens.
I think we just have to start giving them out or something.
Yeah, contact the developers that send us tokens and say, hey, we've got some tokens, and we'll come up with some interesting giveaways, or maybe combine them into one massive giveaway and try to pimp XboxIndies.com or something.
How about
with
we do
it.
some happy
the humble token bundle.
Yeah.
What's a happy Christmas bundle?
It's like
is it a giveaway? I mean,
possibly a giveaway of 5 codes apiece.
It's more like a woot bag of crap, really.
You might get something good.
You might get something good, but we're being honest right up front. It's the because let's be honest, like most of them sat on the queue list for reasons.
Well, no, I think
that reason was none of us were itching to grab that token and review it.
We kept up with them for a while, and then I can't remember what happened. I think it was like when we started doing guests, it seemed like on the podcast, that the rate of getting those tokens just skyrocketed. I don't know that there's a actual causation there, but, and it was just like, we can't keep... And I think it was before that we stopped doing written reviews, so... It was just, and once enough started piling up, then...
That's reason to go back into the stack.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'd love you guys to have to read out the tokens on air. Like, okay, the lucky winner gets token FJ3Z2.
I can do that. I can do that.
We did that. We did that on one of our videos, remember?
Oh, yeah. I think the funny thing is, I think some of them may not work anymore, because I remember going back to review something. I was like, yeah, like early on in the list, I was like, yeah, these have been sitting here a while. I need to pick up a couple of these. I remember typing one in, and I don't think it worked.
It's possible because you can check. A developer can check if they've been used. And there's a hack to it. What you have to do is, first of all, use a token for yourself. Buy your own game, use your own token.
Yeah.
Then go use the tokens that you have been issued by Microsoft, and I think it'll come back and say this token has been used if it's been used, but then it'll come back and say you already own this content if you try to use a token for your same game again, and that way you can determine if the tokens have been used. So they can actually figure out...
I'm betting that happened, or they could have just checked our site, because, I mean, we're on their mailing list, I guess.
Here's something most people may not know about Steven. Steven is probably one of the rare people who have traded his iPhone in for a Windows Phone 7.
Wow.
We were talking about this before.
We were talking
recording.
We were talking about a little bit about this. We pick on the Windows Phone 7 mostly as a market share joke. The actual device itself is pretty slick and
desirable.
The new Nokias that were just shown look attractive. They look.
And the HTC Titan.
I don't think I've seen the Titan. The newest one I've seen is the Nokia's coming out next year, I think.
Yeah, HTC has the Titan and the Radar, which are just rolling out now. And the Titan has the biggest screen of any smartphone, and they both have 1.5 gigahertz processors, and so there's some excitement about them.
So, what was it that you were frustrated with on the iPhone that led you to say, "Hey, I'm not getting an iPhone"?
I'm not a big consumer of apps or anything. I mostly use it as a phone and email and web browsing, and at least at the time, the iPhone seemed to be great at everything but being a phone for me. The way the notifications came up and interrupted me was a pain, and so I looked at Android, considered Android very seriously. I ended up going with Windows Phone 7 for a couple of reasons. One being that the interface is really efficient. The fact that everything scrolls up and down and left and right, it just makes for more sensible organizing than the iPhone, which is very left-right. And in addition to that, I like the idea that it's more open than the iPhone. You have a choice of different form factors, whether you have a physical keyboard or not, different sizes of screen. But it's not as open as Android, where it's a Wild West, and that creates compatibility issues, and there are lots of handsets that won't run a lot of games and that kind of thing. So whereas with Windows Phone, Microsoft said, here's the minimum spec every device has to meet, so you can be confident everything is going to run on everything. So it just seemed to be the right middle ground where you had some choice, not too much. And yeah, the interface is really, really slick.
Yeah, I think I wish they would have a stronger presence here coming into this quarter. I'm a guy who bought the first Droid, and so there's got to be a lot of people who bought that first Droid like me who are up on their 2-year contracts. And, like this is the time for Microsoft to gain market share, because, you got these people that are coming off a G1 Droid, and we're coming off the sting of not being supported, after a certain date, and watching other phones get updated and coming out, and going to the Amazon store and being told you can't download the free app because we don't support your phone. I'm going to go iPhone, I think, will be my next phone. But I've been waffling on the Windows Phone 7, mostly because I love my Zune Pass.
Look at the Titan and the Radar then. Their hot new phones are coming out this right about now. I would check them out.
Well, I think it's going to be a developer decision. It's going to be, hey, in the next 2 years, if I go for mobile apps, I'm going to want to test it on an iPhone.
Yeah.
And I'll have my Droid if I want to test on it. I can just unlock it and test on it if I care at that point. And unfortunately, there's not a big market right now that I would concern myself with targeting Windows Phone 7. That's really all that keeps me off of Windows Phone 7. I love XNA, and I do Silverlight by day at work. So the technology, I'm already really intimately familiar with the platform that it would cost to code it. I just don't see it worth the return on investment of time. And that's not from the device itself. That's from the marketing and the availability.
For sure. Obviously, Windows Phone 7 is in a growth period. It's not going through explosive growth like Android did, but it is growing. And I think that the comparison you did in the last podcast using Chris Steele's game, I think Hypership, that is his results are not entirely typical. There are a lot of games out there that have done better on Windows Phone than on iPhone, in fact, simply because they've managed to become a big fish in a small pond. I love Chris Steele to death. And I play Hypership, but I didn't buy it for Windows Phone because I already owned it on Xbox Live Indie Games too, so that's another factor. Because I think there's more crossover between Windows Phone and Xbox Live Indie Games.
Well, and I think, too, his Windows Phone was the only platform that was also available for free.
Yeah.
It was pay and ad supported, so there might have been a cannibalization of sales in effect there, too.
Yeah, it seems.
I don't know to what extent you could say that happened, but, there's some people who probably might have bought your game, but then played it for free and then decided, I'll just...
Yeah.
The free version.
And that's what I did. I played the free version. He got some ad rev from me, but not a lot, because then I just went back to playing it on Xbox.
But I know when we go back to development, though, we're going to be targeting XNA. We're going to be, for our next couple games, will definitely be Xbox, and there will definitely be XNA, because that still has several years of relevance. That's going to be around. I mean, even after the new console comes out, it's not like the old console is immediately gone. I mean, there's so many freaking Xbox 360s out there right now. It'll probably be a very slow transition to whatever comes out next.
Yeah, like PS2.
Well, then,
PS2 to PS3.
There's still
also,
games coming out
say that
for
the new
PS2.
console won't, and who's to say that the new system won't support indie games in XNA in some form?
Microsoft.
Yeah. That is so dicey at the moment.
Yeah.
And I don't care what I don't care what they want to do. I just wish they would say what they're going to do.
They may not know themselves yet. The system isn't slated to come out till 2013 or so.
Yeah, but I mean, if the grand scheme of things is that we're going to want WinRT, the new Windows 8 and tablet platform, if their grand plan is to get everything on everything, actually, I'd like to know that now. I'll start spinning up now as we make that shift, because there's advantage to that. There's, it's like, hey, one platform and, all the devices. That makes the most sense to me that they're doing it, but it seems like they're trying to have their cake and eat it. So they want to switch platforms. They act like they're switching platforms, but they don't want to say they're switching platforms because that has a negative effect. Well, imagine just on Windows Phone 7. It's already not selling well. Then you announce the Windows Phone 8 will have a completely new runtime. And there'll be a whole bunch of misinformation out there of whether apps will be backward compatible, whether, and if you buy apps now, will they transfer to your new phone? And that doubt will just kill sales even further. I mean, there's a reason that Apple doesn't tell you anything about the next iPhone until they're ready to sell it.
Except for that you want it.
Yeah. That they,
you must have it.
They don't want people who are 4 months away to hold off buying an iPhone because they know what the features are in the next iPhone. They'd rather it be just wild speculation and go like, well, this is good enough and I'll go ahead and get that. Because otherwise their sales would stop after a very small window of release. So I understand kind of why they're doing it, but then at the same point, Microsoft is not in the lead. So that's something somebody does to maintain a lead. I don't know.
And they may be hedging their bets too, because I mean we've discussed that WinRT and Metro, that they've got some hurdles to get over before that becomes standard.
Yeah. So we didn't lose you, did we?
No, I'm here.
Okay. All right. Just weirdly sounded like
like echo, and then it sounded like you dropped the phone.
An echo and a hang up or something. It's on.
I was just really upset about what you were saying about phones, I guess.
Yeah. We took it too far. We went crazy. News this week. This has just started coming out, so we're at the edge of this. But man, I am so sick of these stories. Sick of having to have the fear and the panic. But apparently, Valve is confirming Steam has been hacked. Ours is saying credit card and personal info may have been stolen. So
I think everything I've bought through Steam, I've bought through PayPal, so I am actually feeling pretty good.
As long as PayPal doesn't get hacked, I don't care.
I have no idea what my Steam count is routed to.
Well, usually when you check out, it gives you the option between credit card or PayPal. Like I figured you had to type the stuff in.
Well, I'm almost always using Steam by entering a code.
Yeah.
Because it's almost always my Humble Bundle stuff.
Okay.
But I did buy Sonic, and I have no idea how I paid for that.
Maybe I may never have done it just because I would be afraid for a service like Steam to have my, because if my account gets hacked, someone could go in there and buy a bunch of games, and odds of me getting a refund or...
And you can gift games. So there's an incentive to hack your account because I can make you generate a bunch of gift tokens.
Yeah.
One would hope that Steam could then real easily trace back, well, your account generated all these gift tokens, and this account used them all, so we know who hacked the account. But it just seems like if you manage to not have your account hacked by the PlayStation, not have your account hacked on Xbox to buy a copy of FIFA, guess what? Steam's going to jump in and make sure that you get that same experience too.
Sucks to be somebody relevant in this century.
Yeah, Steam is probably actually in a better position because, like I said, you have to go through that whole shopping cart procedure, and I think... I don't think you have to store your credit card information with them, whereas you kind of do on PSN and Xbox. I don't know about PSN, but I assume you do because it's on a console.
Yeah.
No one wants to type that in.
I will give props, though, to Valve because unlike Sony and unlike Microsoft, they immediately came out and said, hey, watch your stuff, guys. Something happened. We're confirming this happened. We don't have all the details, but, you know, keep an eye on your account. Keep an eye on your any cards that you may use on Steam and are being, you know, they're disclosing everything and they're trying to work for.
Follow common sense procedures in an electronic situation.
An interesting element of that for me is that while some people like to complain about Microsoft points are sitting back saying, how do you like me now? So well, obviously that's a lot of security.
Unfortunately, even though you buy the Microsoft points, you have a credit card tied to your Microsoft account.
Well, unless you buy them with prepaid cards.
You have to do everything with prepaid cards. Your live account, because once they get hold of that credit card, you can't get that sucker out of the system.
Yeah.
In fact, I tried to get it out of my classic Xbox because I modded it, and then I was like, well, I'm never going to use this thing again online. I paid 1 year for the Xbox Live, the year I got the year the console came out, and then realized, like, I don't care about this online. I played Mech Assault. That was the only game I ever played online. Went to go try to take my credit card out of the system, and it's like, no, you can't zero this out because you need to put in a valid number. We won't take that out of the system.
I remember on the 360, my credit card changed. Like, the bank sent me a new debit card or whatever, and I put that in there, and I kind of had to jump through some hoops, as I remember, to delete the old debit card, because it got annoying. Every time I'd make a purchase, it'd be like, which card do you want to use? Obviously the one that actually
one that works, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as developers, Steggs points out, you can't do a creators club with points. That's a cat. Although, is that linked to your Xbox Live when you pay that? And I know it's linked to your Live account, but I don't know that the payment is linked.
I want to say it is, because I know I bought mine off of Xbox. Like, you actually go in there into the marketplace. This was back when, you know, they had the blades and stuff, you know, that interface and stuff.
Right. It does make me want to start looking into the services that do the single-use credit card numbers.
Yeah.
So I don't know who's all supporting this yet, but I have read of services where, mostly from people in comments talking about using it, where you go into the control panel and you have your master account and you go like, well, I need a credit card for Microsoft for today. So here's your disposable credit card. Go put this into Microsoft, and it's kind of like having a password on each individual site. You have all these shill credit card numbers linking to your master credit card number. So if you just want to cancel the Microsoft card, you do it, but it doesn't affect your main account.
It makes sense because as DLC becomes a bigger and bigger thing, I'm sure the reason all these things have hit in the last year is because it's becoming an attractive target.
So, yeah, just heads up there, if you're on Steam and buying stuff, to keep an eye on your accounts for any suspicious activity. Nothing confirmed at this time, and I think what the article said is that the database was grabbed in encrypted form, so they encrypt the data, but they do have evidence that the encrypted data was taken, right? So it possibly could have been, but it just seems like this might end well with, like, hey, they got some forum accounts, and that was the extent of it. Some more news this week. This is kind of tangentially related, but I did want to bring it up. It's related to what we do, but Zynga has set a new low in terms of treatment of employees. Now, Zynga's already pretty scummy. I mean, they have no problem. They go and clone a game and then sue the original for IP violation.
And they go and clone their own game over and over and just slap a different theme.
Yeah.
Okay, that's... Well, admittedly, I've never played a Zynga game. That may be a generalization.
Well... No,
their games are pretty damn close to one another.
Addictive elements.
That's not bad. That's hold on. That's not a bad thing. If you have a game and you make several versions of your own game, the thing is that it was Farm Town, and they make Farmville, and they rip off the guy who did Farm Town, and then like they sue him, or maybe that was the Mafia one where they
It might have been, because I remember...
There was like a Mafia game, and they basically ripped it off feature for feature, style for style, and then sued the original Mafia guy. They've done scummy things. There's been developers talk about that if you come up with an original idea for an original game, you're basically run out of the company. Like some of the guys there had an idea for a Facebook adventure game, so it's like, hey, we're into Facebooking, and look, we got this idea for this Facebooking RPG. And it basically was like, why not let somebody else prove that game is popular by creating it? And if it's popular, then we'll rip it off. If not, we're not in the business of creating new games. Yeah. But what they did here is you give stock options to an employee as a startup in lieu of salary. That's basically saying, like, hey, I don't have money to pay you, so I'm going to get you some options. Now, options are not shares. Options are just that. They are the option to buy shares. It's set at a fixed price, which is usually far below the value of the share. Okay? So when I buy my options, and I exercise my options at $2 a share, the shares are probably worth $10 a share. Okay? So there's some immediate gain, but then your shares are generally frozen until the company goes public or gets acquired. Then your shares become liquid. So they're not like you immediately can then flip the $10 shares. Many times you can't even sell the shares to other shareholders within the company. You can't even do it internally.
They want you to stay there, basically.
Right. But it is a compensation of like, hey, we want to give you some ownership. We want to give you some skin in the game because you're not paying there. The option agreement has what they call a vesting period. The vesting period is simply how long you have to be at the company before you're allowed to exercise those options. So you may get a 5-year plan, and each year of the plan you get 20% of your options vested. So if after 2 years you quit, only 40% of the options could you actually buy as shares. And usually when you quit, you have to buy them then or give them up. Is usually the way it works. Now, there's tons of developers I know that through all software companies, not just games, get screwed on their shares. Because the shares they got were not real shares. They were the second class of shares, and that class of shares didn't pay. Or there was a clause, this actually happened to me in Flock, when Flock was bought by Yahoo. That
you were talking about this in chat last night.
We did not get enough money for the sale of Flock. We, the guys at the top. So we can invoke this clause that says, not enough money clause, we take it all. Right? So at that point, all of our shares were worth nothing. That's just the way it is, right? So you really need to be very careful when you're accepting options at a startup. If you're getting a couple options and, it's a company that's been around 4 or 5 years and they're just throwing a few options at you, that's kind of just a small perk. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is you're coming on, you're employee number 5, you're employee number 10, you're well below your market rate for your salary, and they're offering a bunch of options to compensate. You need to get a lawyer. He needs to review that and let you know that those options are in your best interest. Don't do it any other way. I guarantee you they will screw you when they get the chance. That there is a paragraph that you think is harmless, but then it can turn out to mean something else. And then the other question is when they're offering those to you, don't get confused on the number of shares or value of a share. Ask them, what percentage of the company does that represent? So that you know this is 0.01% of the company, or this is 1%, or this is 10%, and can judge that accordingly. Because that's where it's all going to come down to. It's all going to come down to outstanding shares and everything like that. What Zynga has done is they've given these options, these 5-year vesting options, I don't know what period they vested over, but a period of vesting options to employees. Bust your ass for us, clone our games, now we're getting ready to go IPO, and they feel the employees have too many options. What this really means is that too many shares in the company are tied up by employee options that they can't sell in the IPO now because the employees have the right to buy them in the future. So what they've done is they've threatened to fire employees who do not agree to give back their unvested options. And what makes it worse is that they apparently, from some of the leaked memos or information from the insiders, is that they made a list of the developers in terms of who they thought contributed the least and targeted them first. So basically, you were not worth the deal we gave you, now give it back.
That's rough.
It's a new level of low. It really is. And I really hope. Now, I understand there's 2 developers that have settled. You know, one actually still at the company still, one is left. So they did enter some agreement, some settlement. Man, I really hope they get stung for this, because that as a coercion, that's...
Yeah, I mean, this is Occupy Farmville needs to happen, because this is really, one of those 99% versus the 1%. Obviously, the percentages are different, but that same concept. But like I said last night in chat, like, I don't think bad press will hurt Zynga, because people can either choose to, boycott evil corporation doing shady things, or keep their Farmville plants, growing. And I think we know which people are going to pick.
Yeah, the entire conversation that we're having about how evil this is, she's over there watering crops, playing the Farmville games.
This is not a Farmville game.
Is it Words with Friends?
Is it Words with Friends?
Yes.
Guess who makes that?
Zynga, I know, but I like the Word with Friends.
Just supporting the developers that are
the free app.
Eaten in cages.
I got the free app. And this one
that makes it better.
Yes, it does.
No, it does not.
It's paid with
ads.
It does
not. You still are supporting the torture of developers. And somebody lost their options because you're playing Words with Friends over there. And
because you made them too successful.
Exactly. They are too successful. Sadly, their IPO is probably going to go off like crazy, because they're like gangbusters making money.
Yep.
And in the most despicable way of gaming, like, it's going to be a blemish that's going to take several years to work off. I think there's going to be kind of a day of reckoning, or kind of a general backlash to the micropayments, to the abusive micropayments, to the ones that are like, buy money so that the game is fun.
Right.
Buy Farmville bucks so that the crops grow in less than 12 hours.
I don't know, because I think well, no, because I think the way they cover that is the companies that are doing this, especially Zynga, they're churning out a lot of games. So it's not that people go, man, I'm tired of this. They're like, ooh, new thing. I'll play it. I'm bored of it. Ooh, new thing. Well,
I think what'll happen is, I think it takes 2 pieces. One, people get tired of and to become aware of, like, hey, you guys are making the game painful just to charge me more money. 2, somebody comes out with a better model. Yeah, so everybody starts switching to the better model, and then they realize, like, wow, that was stupid. And it's the same with MMOs. Like, when we first started playing MMOs, the grinding was EverQuest. EverQuest was grinding. And then we figured out it can be more than that. Like, it can be better. And then people moved on to the ones that are better. Now, there's still a lot of grinding involved in WoW, but it's nothing like EverQuest.
It evolves, but I don't think that's necessarily... Because even MMOs moved from a pay system. A lot of MMOs moved from pay to free-to-play, plus, the freemium model. The thing is, whatever model they come out with, realistically, is probably not going to beat, just completely beat out the micropayments, like the Zynga model. I think, it's going to take some investment in that to get it up to the point of, where it becomes as ubiquitous as Zynga's model. I don't think there is a immediate fix, but I don't know.
Our next news item up, I'm going to jump to, is Ben Kane, the developer behind DLC Quest, which was a game of the week for us. Last week?
Also the developer of my 365th review.
Yes. he has a great article on his blog that in developing DLC Quest, he took the opposite approach to his prior approaches. It's the George Costanza from Seinfeld that George Costanza is basically complaining that all of his instincts are wrong. Like he always makes a bad choice when he relies on his instincts. So Jerry Seinfeld offers the corollary. Well, if all of your instincts are the wrong decision, then doing the opposite of your instincts must therefore be the right decision. And of course, George has a much better, life all of a sudden when he does the opposite of what he thinks he should do in any situation.
So what are some of the examples he gives?
So the examples that he gives here is dev time, 1 month instead of 6 months. So instead of spending 6 months on a game and high polish and spending all that effort on it, make a game in 1 month. Limit your game to a game that you can complete in 1 month. His next major point is make a press kit. Now, this is kind of half said ironically because it's like you should make a press kit.
Yeah.
But his kind of thing was, hey, nobody uses the press kits, nobody runs the press kit stories, nobody, does anything with them, don't bother putting in the effort to make a press kit. And even this time he made a press kit and he sent it out to 30 sites, it had been downloaded 30 times after sending it to a bunch of journalist sites, and nobody ran, I think he said that, or did he say one? Nobody actually ran any of the press kit info, like ran pre-release. But 30 journalists downloaded the press kit and took a look, which is 30 more that would have done than if he did nothing.
Yeah.
So at least he got...
You're kind of playing the odds there.
Not only if you don't get the press release, you might gain mind share that's not easily measured. And when the game comes out, somebody might go, I do recognize that, and check it out. What's better than being at the top of a dashboard list is being at all of them. So before he rushed to release his game as soon as possible. This time he decided to release on Wednesday.
Right.
With the idea being that gamers who played it and rated it between Wednesday and Friday would get him boosted in the ratings lists and the top downloaded list come the weekend. So when the weekend hit, he would be on top of the list, and that did work out for him too well. And it actually, he thinks it helped in coverage as well, because he was on top of all the download lists and on top of all the new release lists and sales lists, and got an article that Friday, the week he released, on Kotaku. So that's actually some good information as far as like Wednesday might be, Tuesday, Wednesday might be an optimal release day for reasons that aren't immediately obvious, but when you extrapolate out like where you wind up by the weekend, that pays off.
He has a special case, I think, because like he
because it's a good game.
It's not just that it's a good game; it's something different. Like it's got that satire. It's something that hasn't been done. So there's a better than average shot of Kotaku picking him up, but without all the other stuff he put in, it would have lessened his chances of being picked up to begin with.
His next point was to build on past efforts or don't. So basically he said after spending 6 months on Lair of the Evildoer, he had a robust twin-stick shooter engine, and, that he could make into other things. The instinct would be to use all that work and then, make it easier on the next game.
Yeah.
But to be honest, he was kind of pretty burnt out by that, and so make something completely different. Like, don't get hung up on reusing code. He can always come back to it. But the decision was like, hey, I don't need to be stuck in using my own code. That game should have enemies, health bars, and ways to fail. He said halfway through development in DLC Quest, he realized there's not really a way to fail. There's, and then he started designing in for monsters and spike pits and, health bars and all that, and realized he was only doing that because that's what's expected. And, took a bigger look back at the game and thought, that doesn't add anything to DLC Quest. DLC Quest is not your average platformer. So don't just go with the typical. Don't just go with what everybody else does because you feel those elements must be there. You know, take some risk. You know, put something in that you think it should be there for the game, not because that should be there because the platform demands it, or the genre demands it, really. If you can't sell the game for what it's worth, make it worth what it sells for, which is another fancy way of saying you're going to list games at $1, make dollar games.
And the interesting thing about that and the 1 versus 6 month choice is making that choice entails making a lot of other difficult choices. So it's not just like, I'm going to take 1 month to make a game. It's
I'm not going to do these things.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make a game that requires these things and requires that level of effort.
It's something you have to continuously manage through the whole process.
So, one thing that I'm not quite sure I would put in his plus column, but I have no data. I don't have facts to back this up. He said, don't talk about it. Last time he did a fair amount of blogging and development and making videos about how things were going and progressing and all of that. And this thing, he did nothing. But he basically wanted to test that the marketplace is unaffected by buzz that you get on the internet. And, you know, it pretty much is. Buzz does not affect, even good reviews barely affect games. You really have to get on Kotaku level or better to start to get a tickle of a good internet coverage driving sales.
Yeah. I think that seems like one of those things that you can't accurately judge because it's tied into so many other variables. I mean, you know, if you've got the press kit out there, if you've got, you know, if you do something that makes Kotaku pick you up, then you don't need buzz. But buzz may help get Kotaku
I still
to
think
pick you
it's
up,
very
so.
good to have the development story there.
Yeah.
Because I still believe when it comes to indie games, people love the story more than the game. They love telling their friends, this one guy made the game. They love telling friends, no, this dude Notch made Minecraft, you know? And it's just one guy, and he's really awesome. And they love that kind of, I was there before they were big, you know, that is an asset to an indie studio. Your story is an asset. You're not just a faceless corporation. You know, there's people that, you know, they're just going to play the game. But I think the people who are going to evangelize your game and get out there and like, oh, you got to play this game, they love telling that story. They love telling the story on Binding of Isaac, of how this was just a break project for this other developer. Of like, yeah, I just banged this out in like a weekend and polished it up because I just needed a break. And it's like, look what this guy did in the break. This is so awesome, you know?
I think there again, it's one of those things you can't quantify because there's kind of a balance. I'm sure if you're constantly talking about your game, there's a point where you hit burnout.
Stegs is saying that Baby Maker got buzz without me chasing it, but Baby Maker Extreme also had Morgan Webb.
What the hell is this?
Yeah, Baby Maker Extreme also had Morgan Webb playing it, so...
Yeah. It's just so weird. Like, they're again, it's one of those exceptions that, you know, not every game can be called Baby Maker and have a picture of, like, a pregnant woman on the cover, you know.
He did it twice.
Exactly, but...
Nicer twice.
Yep. Next time, you know, Baby Maker Extreme 3, maybe Upsell Bear is in the stirrups giving birth to a little cub. To a little Upsell cub.
Upsell Bear has to pay the bills.
And Smiler 2 goes, who is Morgan Webb? Oh, you poor UK bastard. And last thing is make a funny trailer. Now, I watched this trailer.
I think actually I can answer that question. For video gamers in America, she is a woman who plays games.
A boobied woman who plays games.
Who's probably happy that...
I think that comes in the definition of woman.
There are small boobies. You need the...
No, I don't think it matters.
I don't
Not
think
on
it
G4.
matters.
Not on G4s, but the bigger boobies, the better.
Morgan Webb is probably happy now that Olivia Munn has left. She can now ascend her throne again.
I think we're getting into like this joke is slowly becoming sexist. Like, you know, well, obviously there are two women on the network. It must be
started
catty.
Sexist.
And it's getting
the danger
worse.
is it going racist.
But Olivia Munn and
is Asian.
Is Asian.
Well, she's
at least half Asian.
She trumped Morgan Webb while she was on that. You can't argue that one.
My argument was that woman who plays games. End of argument.
But I mean, for that like big fish in small pond, Morgan Webb was the queen, and then Olivia Munn popped up, and
I hate people now. Like, you're making me hate people. Actively hating people. Like, well, wouldn't mind watching the world burn now. Not losing.
All I know
much.
is I love Kevin Pereira. I love the sarcastic asshole.
Because he likes to poke both of them.
And yes.
And when they were on the same
I like
together,
Adam.
just like poke and
I like Kessler,
he seems more laid back.
But he's more...
He has the
hands-on,
comic
pragmatic.
But yeah.
He's funny, but he's deep in his reviews and all of that.
He can switch modes.
He doesn't make blowjob jokes at the drop of a hat, and with his co-host there. So he doesn't get hit by his co-host that often.
And for a network that has started
what
showing
I'm saying is I identify with Kevin Pereira more than I identify with Adam Sessler.
Adam Sessler is doing a good job classing up the joint, is all I'm saying.
All right, that wraps up. That's our news. It is what it is. Now it's time for our new games of the week. Steve, I don't know if you've played any new releases this week. You probably don't.
Well, that's an interesting element of the way I do it. I don't actually have the luxury of doing that. I'd love to play DLC Quest, but I've committed to buying the game the day I review it. So I got to wait till it drops off the dashboard.
That could be a while. Now, did you just wait for it to drop off the new releases list, or does it need to be off the top rated as well?
Well, you have to remember that.
Are you there?
Blar?
Uh-oh.
We will never know what we have to remember.
We have forgotten. And there's the Skype charms.
Skype is trying.
Skype is putting him back on. I think he's here.
I think he's about here.
Maybe.
Maybe not. This is riveting radio.
This is excellent.
Did Skype give up?
I can't. I don't want to call phone. Call Skype.
Hello.
And
Yay!
we're there. Yay.
My device here is trying to die.
Oh.
So I'm racing to get the charger. And
So this might happen again.
And you cut off in a perfect spot. You cut off in the thing you have to remember is.
And it died.
Like, what? Do I cut the red wire or the blue wire?
Wow. What were we saying before I said the thing?
I asked, do the games need to come off the top rated and the top downloads list?
The thing you have to remember is that every country has their own lists. And so a game could be in the top 50 list of one country and not in the other. So that's why I have a more general statement about how I review games that aren't well represented in the top 50 list, so I don't get hate mail from people saying, "Hey, it was on the dashboard. What are you doing here?" You know, and because it's in your dashboard in your country doesn't mean it is in most.
That's true. And if slight plug for XboxIndies.com, you can go see all the charts on XboxIndies.com because we go out and download all the lists every night and bring them back. And actually, the ratings on XboxIndies.com are the aggregated ratings across all countries too. I did that.
Oh, cool.
To try to mitigate some of the effects of the rating manipulation.
I did not know that. That's neat.
So, since that mostly happens in the U.S., like the game will still maintain great, UK and Canada rankings and Japan rankings, but yeah. drives down to the database with his truck and picks up the data packets. That's how it happens. That's how the internet works. All right, now it's time for our new releases of the week, and our first one up is Starcatcher. This is not really puzzle, but puzzle platformer, I guess you could say. You are you're a sun or a planet or a flaming planet or a dying star, I don't know, because you're much bigger though than the actual stars.
Yeah.
And what you have to do is bounce on all the stars to collect them. But if you miss a bounce, like that's it, you're out.
It took me a second to figure out what... It took me some time to figure out what was going on, just because you're in space, and yet there is this gravity element.
You're not much catching stars. You're a star bouncer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually kind of got into it. I felt like they did something very different with the platformer genre.
And it does suffer a little bit, though, because it has a shortened trial.
Yes.
It has an extremely short trial. So you only go through like 5 screens, was it?
5.
And then you're done. It was interesting, but I don't know from the trial that I'm interested to play any more of it.
Yeah.
Our next game that we have up is Pumpkin Smasher, which is a really bad Angry Birds clone. Does anybody want to add to that?
I'm glad it came out after Halloween, so nobody had to advertise that.
I kind of feel sorry for them because they're like, this is a great idea. It's coming out before Halloween. Nope. Try like a week after.
Next one up.
Should have used turkeys.
Claustrophobia. This is a dual stick shooter, very, very similar to I Made a Game of Zombies in it. Like,
yeah,
it really plays that. Except, was this the one that played slower?
I think so. This was not. You may be thinking of the Zombusters.
This one had the zombies that were bones, and then the zombies that were fleshy, and the zombies that were fleshy took like 50 bajillion more bullets to go down.
Now, you could, there was an upgrade mechanic between levels. This is where early in the show we were talking about jaded reviewers and having seen that. Yeah. It's like, I've seen that. As a dual stick shooter, it's not bad.
Graphically,
it's okay.
It's kind of polished. I mean...
But unfortunately, it just falls into that bucket of mediocre, right? And it's almost worse than bad. Like just being mediocre is like there's not a good thing about it. There's not a bad thing about it.
It doesn't matter how polished your zombie dual stick shooter is, it's still a zombie dual stick shooter. And you have to bring something more if you want to play that niche.
Our next game up, now I do kind of feel bad for these guys coming out when they did. 3D Pixel Art Studio coming out right after Pixel Animator that Stegosaurus Games had released, which that game... So this is another creation, not really a game, art creator, but it uses voxels instead of pixels, so you create 3D objects out of blocks, out of voxels. Very Lego-like. But the other game that Stegs had, Pixel Animator, it had animations. You could save objects with animations in them and then compose them in a scene. It had a ton more flexibility.
It was the game you want.
This one didn't have any of that. It was just basically, stack some Lego bricks.
And you can make a flower.
And you're done.
I made a cactuar.
I filled a whole level full of red blocks.
Yes, you did. And then ate out some of them, I saw.
And then, but there's no animations that you could add to it.
I wanted to animate my cactuar.
So I guess, this would have been more interesting had it come out before the Pixel Animator, but since it came out after, it's like...
And they were so close together, it's not like some guy... I would assume it's not like some guy just said, hey, I think I'll build, a full-featured...
I will clone you in a week.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah,
that would
if
be
it was
impressive.
a clone you in a week, that's impressive. But still not buying it.
Yeah. Our next one up is the first one that we did video for, Zombusters. And is a dual-stick shooter in an isometric perspective.
Yes.
So that's not as
kind
common.
of awkward.
It plays a little awkward. It doesn't help it much.
Graphics are nice though.
Zombies get stuck on terrain, but you'll see in the video, graphics are polished. The controls seem well. The shooting feels right. They forgot to put in a game.
Yes.
You know, like it's just wave after wave, and it needs something else. Like it has so many good elements done right on execution.
It moves so slowly, I think. And granted, we didn't use the level select mechanic, but it just moves so slowly. It's kind of like, you know, there's no challenge. There's no twist.
Yeah, it lacks a difficulty curve. It wasn't getting more difficult.
I mean, I've talked about, and like I said in the video, I've talked about there are games there are engines in search of a game before. This actually has, you know, it's a little more on the game side, but it's still looking for something.
Yeah. So, adding to this though, or maybe taking this engine and going somewhere with it, it just needs,
but you know,
a focus.
Multiplayer.
The other thing was with the multiplayer, it did not scale up the difficulty in relation to the multiplayer, so one player gets the same number of zombies as 3 players did. That wouldn't be so bad if one player could handle all the zombies. So 3 players, I mean, we just kind of stood in our corners and took care of a wall, and that was it. You know, we didn't have to coordinate or do anything.
Yeah.
I think you fell in the river again on this. No.
No, the zombie walked into the river.
Zombie walked into the river.
I don't think you could fall
died
in the river.
On the bridge or getting off the bridge.
Yeah,
or something.
I picked up like one of the machine gun weapons or something. So I was getting up close and blasting them, and I wasn't watching my health because there was no.
Machine guns mean you move away.
Our next game is Get to the School on Time. This is by GHXYK2.
And this is on my list of worst games ever.
This is more of a game than the prior GHXKY2.
Indeed, but it's still on my list. And this, I may just put this entire developer staff on that list. Make like bike.
It is some sort of performance art. It is not a game. It is performance art.
Yeah, it's because it has moments in there, and all of them do, that give you a hint of like, you know, that took some level of effort to produce that crap. That is not just...
Well, it's not crap. It's like...
slapped together.
It's like retro...
There's an intent to slap that crap together.
Yeah. No, this is E.T.
Well, no, there are references to retro games and kind of the retro style of games, plus, you know, MS Paint. And it's some weird combination of those, written by someone who, you know...
No beer for them.
I don't know, yeah. It's not that they're having trouble focusing is the problem.
Maybe more beer for them?
Our next game up is Flow Rider. Flow Rider. All my friends on the Flow Rider. This is a racing game, and the controls, your little watercraft, your little like water ski, jet ski type, hovercraft type guys, and you use the left thumbstick to go that direction. So instead of having like a gas pedal and in the left you just tap the steer or something, you're constantly holding that in the direction you need to go as you go in a circle in a loop. But there's an inertia thing too with the physics of the game, so that when you turn, you kind of slide as you turn and you drift a little bit. And that makes the fact that you got to point the direction you want to go really awkward, because it's hard. I found it next to impossible to use the drift to my advantage.
You kind of have to adjust for it. On the first level, after playing it a couple times, after restarting a couple times, because, you know, the whole control scheme just messed me up, I kind of got into a rhythm with it, and then I went to the next level and completely lost it.
We did video of it, so...
it's a real polished game as far as graphics go.
We jumped in, though, on split screen, and the split screen doesn't do a good job of
anything.
It's zoomed in too close on your ship, and it's not centering your ship. So it became really hard to see the track with multiplayer.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it also has an online multiplayer.
It may have.
I want to say
it could have. It had a lot of menu options. In fact, let's see. Yes, okay. It has an online component. Our next game, Bobby. Do you want to explain what you did on this one, Cicely?
Please.
This was a pain. I liked the graphics, but it was a pain. The physics require you to bounce some balls who don't interact with each other very well, does not play well with others, and they barely react with you well. And there were some balls that I managed to hit full on speed, and I go in the opposite direction. And the ball just sits there.
So this is a physics-based game.
It is a physics-based game, except it doesn't make sense the way the physics act.
It's broken. Oh. Watch the video. It's broken.
Oh.
Something was broken in the video.
My will to live.
Yeah.
Next game, I'm not going to spend much time on this. Snake 2. It's Snake. Eat the dot. Get bigger.
Yeah,
Eat the dot again.
The control scheme's kind of weird because you actually have to turn, so you have to bank and.
Yeah, it instead of.
I've played some of these on Flash.
I mean, that's the challenge.
But
I think
is that the challenge? You think that's the intent? Like bad controls are the intent for the difficulty of the game?
No, I've played this on Flash, and that's how it played on the Flash game, and it was bad.
I think because. And I don't know if this changes later on, but you couldn't make a tight enough turn that you could run into yourself. So it literally seemed to be about not hitting the wall. I may be wrong.
We spent more time talking about it than I thought we would.
Yeah.
Next one up is Robo Platformer 2. Robo Platformer, I don't remember if that was a game of the week, but we did like that. I do remember that we liked Robo Platformer quite a bit. Robo Platformer 2 is more Robo Platformer.
Yep.
So it didn't launch into any new mechanics. It seemed to just pick up from where it left off with all the mechanics introduced. The soundtrack wasn't as impressive as it was the first time to me. The first time I thought, like, wow, that was a crazy awesome soundtrack. But the game still plays pretty well. We didn't do video on this because it's pretty much the same platformer as the original one. And, you know, everything about the original one still applies. Still a pretty good game. Iron Core is the slowest playing Galaga Space Invaders game I have ever played, I think.
It looked like... I think the deal with this was you would pick up special weapons that would bind to your X, A, and B keys. So you had like a spread shot, you had a large shot, and then you had an exploding shot. And I think that's the reason why it was so slow. They were going for a little more control rather than bullet rain. So I kind of liked it, but
yeah.
Only because it was doing something different.
Chat seems obsessed with renaming the game
to
the Snake game. I don't know. They should get their motherfucking snakes off my motherfucking game. That's gold, baby. All right, Masters of Influence.
You see how he amuses himself?
Yeah, I don't need a podcast to do this. I just sit down here and do this to myself. Masters of Influence. We did video on this one. This looks like a fairly interesting strategy game. Very simplified, but still kind of detailed. Like, the gameplay and the commands are really simplified. But at the same time, like, there's a complexity about the game. So you don't have to directly mine resources. You are auto-mining resources based on the territory you control. So you kind of got to pay attention, though, to what territories you're controlling, because in the video, I screwed myself and didn't have any wheat and couldn't expand.
And what you're trading, there's it feels like a very complex board game, and aside from some control issues, it's a really neat engine they've got. Like, it's all in 3D, but it's hex tiles, and you can rotate and zoom and everything. So
it looks like this would be a fun game to play.
Yeah.
With a couple people who are into some kind of strategy game. And it's kind of a refreshing, like it's not another Risk type game on there. Unfortunately, in the video, we never actually got into the combat between the areas. We were kind of just expanding and territorial control.
Yeah, we
but not actually taking each other's towers.
Mike could have if he'd gone the right direction.
Well, I didn't capture enough resources.
Nope.
Yeah.
Or enough variety of resources. Next game we also did video of, and it was pretty good. Growing Pains. So this is a pretty novel platformer, in that all the levels are connected. They're basically rooms of platforms. You run around, you collect some rainbow pills. They make you happy. And the more time you take, the larger you grow. But then each room is like exponentially bigger than the room before it. So you get pretty big in one room. Now you're so small in the next room, they actually have to put an arrow on screen to point out where you are. You can speed up your growth, but you do run the risk of growing too large to actually complete the level you're in.
Too big to win.
Too big to win.
Too big to fail, or too big not to fail.
Yeah, that's where that usually goes.
It seemed like they were doing a lot of stuff. I like that they were, changing up the platformer genre. It seemed like a lot of stuff because, they had the ground pound thing. They had the wall jump, which kind of behaved differently than
it was all thrown at you at once, definitely.
Yeah.
The tutorial was okay about introducing you to the stuff quickly, but then it just got real quick into do it on your own. But at the same token, you didn't have to do the ground jumping. You could just do the wall walking if that's your thing.
Yeah.
If that was the one you were comfortable with, you could do that. Or you could just, jump up and get to wherever you needed to go. So,
you kind of had some options.
Yep. Choose your own adventure.
Next one up, Distortion King. This is
Rock Band. Guitar Hero, I guess, technically.
Okay, this is a Guitar Hero.
I actually pulled out my guitar and played it, like my Rock Band guitar, and I mean, it's a decent clone. It doesn't have like the whammy bar effects and overdrive and all that, but and it doesn't have the same sort of hit detection.
Issue with it though is this is like being forced to play all the Rock Band songs you don't know and have never heard of.
Yes, it is.
So this is basically like these guys, instead of putting these tracks up in the Rock Band network, they took the Rock Band network tracks and put out a separate game on it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's kind of cool that indie developers are doing this, and,
Next one up is Castle Miner Z. So, they basically took Castle Miner and threw some zombies in it and then put it back out. And it's horrible. It's awful in its own right.
He managed to get underground fast enough to keep the zombies from getting him?
Don't the zombies spawn underground?
No.
I did not realize that.
Yeah. So, like, on the third time, I just dug straight down and then threw some dirt above me. And then dug out horizontally until I escaped the mountain.
Wow. I actually had some fun with it, because they've got survival mode, or I forget what the first one was. There's like survival, endurance, and one was how far
can you run?
It, which was kind of cool. It wasn't so... Well, okay.
But it had frame rate issues and lag, load, save time stuff, so you would glitch out when you were trying to run or trying to break a block or something
And if you glitched into something, it glitched further, and basically you got eaten.
Yeah, and the zombies spawn so quickly that I just did not even try to learn the crafting. I was just okay.
And the weapons didn't do much of anything against the zombies.
The pistol did.
I shot like a zombie like 6-7 times at point-blank range.
I don't know.
And it was still coming.
It took a couple shots.
2 to the head, it's supposed to be dead, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I had a problem with the knife. Once you get in knife range, you're screwed.
Yeah, the knife, it didn't matter. If you were close enough to use a knife, you were dead. Because it really almost like a one-hit kill type scenario. It might have been 2-hit kill.
I think it would have been better if Castle Miner didn't already exist, and it wasn't just like, we're taking this engine, and it was, if it was actually the first release, and they said, here's a Minecraft concept.
They could have very easily, since they're doing the Minecraft cloning, put in zombie survival mode to their existing game.
Yeah.
Instead, they did that and then released it as a new game.
I'm curious to see what it does compared to Castle Miner and Total Miner.
Is that it? Is that all our new releases for the week? I think that is.
Yep.
Wait, no, did we get to...
There was that one game that didn't end up
it didn't pop up. Yeah, what was the name of that? The game with the cervix on the cover.
It looked like a cervix. It wasn't a cervix.
I think it was like a generic, blood vessel or something.
Because it branched.
But, yeah.
And the cervix doesn't branch, nor does it go on that long.
I will get it. It's actually inside the body. It said the game was inside the body, so...
Technically, that's inside the body.
Hey, that box art for all games is broken again.
Oh.
You're all diseased is what sticks.
You're all diseased is the game.
I didn't actually play this one.
All the imagery... You're all busted. You're all the diseased. All the imagery is gone from
diseased
Xbox.
Our computers.
Xbox.com. Microsoft can't run a frickin' web. Move it to Azure, guys. Come on. Yes, so you're all diseased. Cicely, you did play this one, right?
Yes, I did. And the game was a twin-stick shooter that kind of didn't work very well on a horizontal scrolling plane. It wasn't a force scroller, but as you go forward and you go backwards, people spawn and you have to take out the nodes that they're coming from, otherwise they can just spawn behind you, and that's sucky too. And there's no feedback in the controller that you're getting killed. There's just a sound that you're getting killed, and then you kind of explode, and that's your life. But I never figured out where my life counter was. I figured out where my health meter was, because it kind of came down, but they said that's where my shot meter was, too, and I was like, I have no idea what's going on.
When a game makes you afraid, like, what is happening?
I'm going to my safe place. I'm in my safe place. Oh, that wraps up our new releases for the week. Game of the week.
Not that one.
Oh.
The game of the week is Halo Wars, like it is every week.
Unfortunately, not an indie game.
I would either say Growing Pains or Masters of Influence. I think those are the ones.
Go back and read through the...
The videos were the game I just closed, Flow Rider, Masters of Influence, Growing Pains.
The zombie one.
Oh, Zombusters.
Oh, yeah, the zombie...
Castle Miner's Dead.
Zombusters. And Bobby.
It's a really tough choice. I would actually almost go with Zombusters, or I almost want to say Flow Rider, but no. I mean, it started out like after...
Zombusters has no gameplay to it, though.
I know. I just... And I'm not saying...
It looks pretty, but
yeah.
Is that where we've become? we don't care what comes out of her mouth as long as she looks pretty. Is that?
No, I don't think it's that.
The iPad way.
It's.
Is that it? Is it the Morgan Webb Award? Is that what you want to give it?
No, it's the amount of. There is a certain amount of polish put into it, and as opposed to, I'm trying to think what. Man, okay, Starcatcher. Actually, no, we didn't do Starcatcher. Why was that? Because that was one that I was actually thinking about when I was playing through it.
Masters of Influence, Growing Pains, Flow Rider, Zombies, or Zombusters.
I'm going to be honest, the genre-wise, like, Growing Pains and Masters of Influence didn't do a lot for me, and that's kind of how I arrived at...
Cicely, where are you at?
I'm thinking either Flow Riders or Growth.
I would say Growing Pains.
Growing
that's
Pains?
Actually, like I said, they're all really close. There's a lot of solid B
Growing
students.
Pains I like because of the idea and the direction it was going in.
Yeah.
It didn't seem necessarily executed bad either. I could have done with better art. I think the art style.
The art. He was kind of cute.
He was, but I mean, like the level background and seeing where the Spike guys were stand out from the other things going on.
Yeah, the bad Spikes needed.
It wasn't horrible,
color.
but the art could use some love.
Yeah. I guess I looked at it and said, "Ooh, puzzle platformer. This is going to get tough."
So is that where we're at then? Growing Pains?
Yes.
Okay, so Growing Pains, congratulations. GameMarx Game of the Week. Before we get out, Steve, any last words? Words of wisdom?
Yeah. More than once I've had the idea, because I'm not a programmer, anything but a programmer, of actually commissioning an indie game. I know you have some developers that listen to your podcast, and the idea of more than once has occurred to me to do that and have a so that would be something that if anyone developers want to contact me, I'd be interested in discussing.
On the XNA forums, if you go to create.msdn.com, there is a forum for help wanted, help offered.
Oh, okay.
Where you can kind of post in there like, hey, I'm trying to get this idea together.
You don't have to have an App Hub subscription for that.
No, I don't. No, you don't have to have a subscription for that. That can be kind of open, and posted there. I don't know what the response rate is on those.
That's a tricky thing anywhere on the internet.
Yeah.
You're like, I've got this great idea, but as you know, having reviewed 365 games, having played a lot of trials and reviewed a lot of trials ourselves, I totally get, well, you see what works and what doesn't. And
don't always assume because something's easy to you, it's easy to someone else.
Right.
I know several developers that look at design as a mystical black box that they could never do anything in. And same with like game ideas even and being able to come out with a full working game system. Yeah. You can have a developer who is quite capable of executing in code and just doesn't feel they have the idea to do it. So don't ever sell that stuff short. That there's people out there that you can work with that have talent in areas you lack and you have talent in areas they lack. So that's a good place to start there. The sticks to the playtest forums. You couldn't get in the playtest forums without an account at that point. You would need to be an App Hub member to download. But at that point, things are in playtest anyway. That's a little too late. But I see posts going by all the time at various stages with that. Anything else?
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's. We could go on for hours, I'm sure. We could talk about the challenges of reviewing a game that I recognize as a good game, but I don't particularly care for it. But that's not the role of the site. It's the role of the site is to try to identify the hidden gems, whether if it's a soccer game or a Japanese role-playing game style. I may not like it personally, but Is that the goal? It's not.
Yeah, so we have the luxury of going, I can go, this is a JRPG, I don't like JRPGs.
When do you handle it?
Dylan or Cicely, yeah, are you interested in it? And the reverse is true, this is a shooter. I do a lot of hard as fun games, but I rag on them the hardest.
Yeah,
I can't say I like that genre, but I take them on.
But you have something to say about the genre.
Yeah.
And I have the opposite problem, interestingly. There are a few games that I really loved that apparently are quote-unquote bad games. The Internet Brain Trust has concluded that they are quote-unquote bad. Two that I ended up reviewing were Chalked and Sol Invasion, and I love them both. But I think they're both rated about half a star on Xbox.com.
Yeah, and even not just the star ratings, but even what other developers think on that. There's been games that I have loved that I know the average gamer does not like, or definitely the developer doesn't like, such as Get Rich or Die Gaming.
Yeah, I remember you making a big deal
I thought that
about
was great, and everybody was like, "Oh, this is just garbage, and why is it on the service, and this shouldn't be here." And I thought it was, it was wonderful. I still got video of that to put up.
When I reviewed Chalked in particular, I took some good-natured flack from Kobun, who's an Xbox Live indie game blogger that I respect,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, this is a bad game. No one likes this, and I said, well, no one but me apparently. So in situations like that, I have to defer to the fact that, well, this is a game with strong production values. They put some effort into it, and I really liked it. So I'm going to review it. But there have been a couple of games where I played it. Wow, I really like this, but it doesn't have strong production values particularly. I can't make a case for it being a game worthy of review.
So I think the tack that we took was reviews are our opinions. And to the point where we actually said we can't use language to make an assumption about a gamer, about a generic gamer.
Yeah, like you will...
So you can't say like, you will have fun, picking from 4 classes, let's say, or, you might find the mage interesting or something like that.
I think you didn't want to use, like, you at all.
Correct. Like, you couldn't do on that. So, I mean, the thing is like, no. You don't know what the hell I may or may not like. I found the mage character interesting. So, the review is from my perspective. I found it interesting. Not everyone may agree with me.
The key is to, when you do or don't like something, to be able to describe clearly why you do or did, why you liked it or not. And that way, even people who disagree with you can get something out of it. And usually when I was doing a written review, I'd come back at the end and say, this is the type of gamer I think this game is for. And if you're this type of gamer, try it. Otherwise,
I think we've done that a couple times in the ending, which is different than assuming the gamer likes something. It's basically saying, like, if you've liked first-person shooters, twin-stick shooters,
It's basically giving that caveat to...
If you don't...
I gave it this review, but I don't think everyone would give it this review.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem, like you were saying, with their bad games. It's so much of it is subjective.
Well, every bad game, even, E.T., even Aquaman, every bad game has its fans.
I liked E.T.
I actually kind of did, but
I didn't know I didn't know it was this horrible game until like I found it on Wikipedia, and I was like, wow, really? Dumped a whole bunch of carts in Mexico? No idea. I did show it to Cicely and like play the game, and she came away like, what the fuck was that?
It was a game about picking yourself up from gigantic holes in the earth you fall into.
Oh man!
When I played it, I hadn't seen E.T. 2.
I didn't need Wikipedia to know that was a bad game.
Well, I didn't know how absolutely crazy the game was, like, and how it had nothing to do with the movie. I just
kind of, because you had to build the phone to call home.
Yeah, but
you had to avoid the agent. Billy could get you out of the prison. You could get Reese's Pieces for life. Maybe
there was no life. I don't remember Reese's Pieces.
You got Reese's Pieces for something.
Maybe it was candy. Oh yeah, you could pick up.
You died if you took too many steps. You died.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, and you could eat candy to replenish.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know. At that point, all I'd played was the Atari that my parents had. Had I think gotten before I was born. Plus, all those games. Or later. I had a Nintendo, so
yeah,
limited information.
But I don't know. I kind of liked E.T.
I'm a kid. I'm
for
bored.
The time too, because it was a game with some depth, and you didn't have many of those on the Atari. You didn't have many adventures. Yeah. You had Space Invaders and Pac-Mans.
Everything was happening on a single
and Defenders.
Screen.
And everything was like, this is just a Twitch reaction game. Here was a game that, offered a little bit of depth. So, yeah.
That actually is the only thing anyone's ever said to me makes any sense about why anyone would have liked that game. I had an Intellivision on Atari, so the games there tended to have a lot more depth. They had a controller that had a lot more buttons.
Oh, yeah. My grandparents had a ColecoVision, and that put the fucking Atari to shame, man. They had Qbert. That shit was crazy.
I remember playing Qbert in the arcade in the skating rink. That was fun.
But I go back, as a developer, I go back to a lot of those Atari games and look at them and wonder which one of these is an idea that got lost that needs to come back. Which one of these is something an indie developer can mine for lost ideas.
The game I want to see an indie developer mine for lost ideas is Mule from the Commodore 64. That game was badass.
Yeah, I do know a lot of people that like that. I didn't have a Commodore 64. I had a Tandy, but my downstairs neighbor had a C64. And between Mule and Carnival, I think, that's all that computer was ever used for.
Yeah, I think
whatever the jumping one was on the seesaw, where you had a guy, he jumped, and then he'd land on the seesaw, and he would bounce up in the air, and you would grab some points, grab some balloons, and then he would land, and you try to land him on the opposite side, then just launch him back over to grab some more, and you just kept bouncing him back and forth.
Well, I'm not sure that was.
It's like a
something.
It's like a carnival. It's like a Carnivale 0.1 beta.
Carnivale 1980.
Yeah. Oh, there's an online remake of Mule available. Sweet. I'll have to check that out. Rocky's Boots is a game I've thought about going back and redoing.
What's it called?
Rocky's Boots. It was an educational game.
Oh.
You actually connected a circuit together that fired a boot, and that boot had to hit shapes or colors that were scrolling on the other side of the screen. So you'd have a sensor, and it's like, the goal is to hit all the red objects. And then so you build a circuit that would detect the red objects and kick them. But the circuit was actual, and, NOR gates, logic gates. These were the actual circuitry symbols that you played with. But you could build these whole Rube Goldberg-type contraptions from such basic stuff. That was a game I played on the Tandy. That was an early PC game made by the Learning Company. I think that was here in Knoxville.
I think one of my friends played it, but that was because their grandmother or something saw Rocky and thought Rocky and Bullwinkle.
So, well, all right then. It's about midnight here, so I want to thank everyone for tuning into the show. I want to thank Stephen for coming on, and I hope you have several more years of covering indie games, even if you don't cover one a day. I like.
Yeah, I'm planning to do more features.
I like reading through. I like clicking through and reading the ones. I like the idea of a blog that just is putting up the ones they like as well. Because it's kind of like, even if I don't read the review, I know to sort of put that one on my list. Like, hey, he's recommending this one. And if I don't get time to read that review today, or I get behind on him, I at least know to go back and check that out. All right.
Thanks for having me on.
Everyone else, thanks for tuning in, and we will do this again in a week.